Hello and welcome back to the channel, everyone. So the last video I did was on the Aeromotive B1 speakers. Sorry, I was drawing a blank there. And in the comments section, someone asked me how they compare to the Sonos Play SL speakers, which I have right here. And I didn't own them at the time, and I normally don't take requests, but I've seen a lot of Sonos stuff pop up lately, and they're good-looking speakers, honestly, and I did really want to try them. So during Black Friday, I picked them up for a little bit cheaper than usual. So we're gonna review them. I literally bought them just to review them. I'm gonna sell them as soon as I'm done with them. That's not something I would keep. It's not my style, but we're gonna get into all that right now. The review format is gonna be a little bit different because there's not a lot of specs out on these. Sonos is one of those companies, kind of like Apple, that's like, here's the product, just enjoy it. They don't believe the consumer needs to know what kind of amplifier is inside the speakers or the sizes of things and the frequency cutoffs. They just don't provide that data. We will compare the Sonos speakers to some like audiophile speakers. I'll give you my thoughts on that. We're going to talk about the pros. We're going to talk about the DSP in them, the cons, the sound, and then I'm going to tell you about some alternatives. So while there's no specs listed, you can see through the grill a little bit if you shine a light. And I was able to measure a little bit, and it looked like the mid-woofer that's down here is about 2.75 inch, and it looks like there might be a 0.75 inch Silk Dome tweeter up top. These both plug, this is two of them, which is a stereo set. They both need AC power because each one is powered, and you would set them up as a stereo set within the Sonos app. So the pros, I think they're really, really good looking. They're small, they're sleek, they just really are stylish. They have big sound for their small size. They're well balanced in terms of sound, as long as they're not pushed too hard. They're easy to set up. The app was pretty straightforward. I really could see anybody using it. There's one funny part where it asks you to kind of like walk around your room with your phone in your hand and just kind of like moving your phone all over the room. Supposedly, you know, the mic of your phone is used as part of the DSP tuning. And I tried them in two different locations, and I did set them up both times for those locations, and I did notice a big difference. So I do highly recommend, if you buy these or own these currently, if you move them to a different spot, set them up again as if they were brand new and do the DSP correction. It makes a huge difference in sound. The app shows promise, that's another pro I listed, and AirPlay is another pro I listed. And the AirPlay is very important. You'll find out why when we get to the cons. Spoiler, it's because the Sonos app is a little buggy. But we're going to talk about the DSP before we get into the cons. So there's a lot of wizardry going on in these. It seems like the DSP is constantly trying to make sure these speakers sound their best at any volume. I don't know if that's a pre-programmed curve based on loudness or if they adjust in real time. I have no idea. But what it feels like is the DSP is doing its best to compensate for the demand for more loudness when you turn up the volume. So I had my trusty dB meter out, took some measurements, and these sound best right around 70 decibels. While I was using Tidal airplaying to these, that was half volume. Now, depending on what app you use, where your volume slider is might vary. I found on iTunes 70 dB was closer to like 3/4 volume, but then sometimes it wasn't. It really depends on the Sonos app, if you're using that, or if you're airplaying from iTunes, Tidal, or other music service to these. But 70 dB, these sounded great. They sounded really, really good. I was so surprised. My roommate came downstairs and he was like, what the hell are these? He listened to them and he was super impressed as well, which is rare. He's a really picky guy. But they lose bass past half volume. So once you get into like 70, anywhere between like 70 and 75 dB, they just start to like go down on the bass. 3 clicks past half volume. Again, this is using the Tidal app and airplaying to these, which was 75 dB. The DSP becomes just like intrusive. it becomes really obvious and it's like terrible. It pulls virtually all of the bass out of the speakers. You're left with just this like mess of a V-shaped curve, like, but it's, instead of the V of the bass being like deep into the bass territory, it's at like 200 hertz. And the treble starts to spike and the mid-range starts to like spike forward to kind of give you this like illusion of loudness, and it just gets terrible. Max volume that I was able to get out of these with the slider turned up all the way was 87 decibels, and it is completely intolerable. Funny thing was there was no like flutter sound from the cone. I didn't hear like any I don't know, like potential failure occurring in the speaker, like distortion or anything like that. So the DSP does its job as best it can. Yeah, I wouldn't try to turn these up all the way. So we're gonna get into the cons here. Actually, let me see if there's anything else I want to talk about in regards to the DSP. We might come back to it. Cons. So the app is a little buggy. One of the things that really pissed me off, because keep in mind, I bought these, right? I own them, and the companion app is for these. And when you pay for something, what shouldn't you deal with? A freaking advertisement. And the app has ads in it. It spams you with advertisements for Sonos products. Full page ads that you have to click out of before you could use the app. I personally feel that is really unacceptable. I absolutely hate when ads are forced onto you. Like when you own the product. TVs do that shit too. It really is frustrating. I feel like ads should only be allowed if you're getting something free out of it. Like you got YouTube for free, you're watching YouTube for free. Yeah, there's gonna be some ads. It is what it is, right? Let me tell you about some of the bugs in the app though. So the seek bar just disappeared on me all of a sudden. So if I wanted to skip ahead within the same song, I had to use like AirPlay, right? So I had to use Tidal or iTunes and AirPlay to the speaker because the Sonos app itself, which does have like Tidal in there and like other music services, the volume slider just, it wasn't there. When you pause a track and then press play again, it would skip to the next track. Again, that's using the Sonos app. So it is a beautiful app. It's really easy to use. It's really straightforward. There's EQ adjustments in there for bass and treble. You can recalibrate the DSP if you move the speakers. It's a great app and shows a ton of promise. It's just a little buggy right now. Another con I listed is these need a subwoofer to sound their best. And unfortunately, that pushes the total cost over $1,000. So because of all the DSP wizardry, once you add a subwoofer to these, the Sonos sub, it's the only sub you can add to these, the DSP recalibrates for that sub, and these can be played much louder without starting to fall apart, which is super cool, but you know, we're entering the $1,000 territory. That's a lot. These not on sale, which they're usually not on sale, are $378 for the pair. The accompanying sub is another $700. It's quite a hefty price tag, honestly. That's why I listed it as a con. And I'll be honest, guys, like I make good money, you know what I mean? I'm not a cheap guy. For me to list price as a con, like I think they need to look at that, honestly. So those are the cons. So the sound, what do they sound like? Under 70 decibels. They sound balanced. They sound full range. Everything sounds good for its size, okay? Again, look, these are pretty small, you know? This is the Emotiva right next to it, just a normal bookshelf speaker, actually a somewhat medium to small bookshelf speaker, I'd say. So you can see these are small. You can't really expect them to play like a tower or a really expensive bookshelf speaker or even a cheap bookshelf speaker that's 3 times their size. You have to kind of evaluate them for what they are, which is a tiny, tiny, tiny self-powered speaker, Bluetooth speaker essentially that you can, actually they're not Bluetooth speakers, I shouldn't say that, they don't have Bluetooth, they only have AirPlay. Anyway, you get my point, they're freaking small. But, oh wait, sorry, hold on, I lost my card, sound. So they sound good, whether it's the treble, the mid-range, or the bass. At 70 decibels or below, they sound good. Now, I'm not saying they sound great. I'm not saying they sound phenomenal. I'm not saying they have amazing decay, bass extension, and articulation, and fucking imaging, and no, I'm not saying all that. They don't have all that. They just sound good. They sound good for their size. Do they sound $378 good? It's hard to put it in a perspective like that because these are designed to be quite different in my opinion. It's just good sound for the everyday person, which is great. So a little bit more on sound. Over 75 decibels, awful. Forget about it. If you like your music over 70, these are not for you. Don't buy these. Forget about it. They're just terrible. They sound so bad. I can't even begin to describe how bad they sound. So again, under 70 decibels, they're a treat. Over 75 decibels, just not, yeah, don't do it. Alternatives. This is my favorite part of this review. So while these are really good, and I do recommend them if you need something like small and you're not going to listen loud, background music, something like wife-friendly, mom-friendly, like whatever the case, you know, like these will give you like good balanced natural sound. But if you're an audiophile and you're wondering how they stack up to audiophile speakers, they fucking don't, okay? They just don't. They're tiny, they don't play loud worth of shit, the bass rolls off, the DSP intervenes left and right. No, they're not audiophile speakers. Forget about that shit. Now, if you're an audiophile that wants these for your bedroom, just to like have some light tunes at night, yeah, you'll probably like them. They're not gonna replace anyone's primary system though. They're just not. I get it, they look good, they're small, they're steezy, they're cheap, like, we want these to sound amazing. I know some people watching this video, you were hoping I was gonna sit here and tell you, these are just as good as like if you had separates. They're not, I'm sorry. So the alternatives, the Emotiva Airmotive B1 Pluses combined with a Lipai LP1601S amplifier is $347 and a superior option. I know because I own the speakers and I own that amplifier, and it's a superior option in every way. And we could step up because that option is actually cheaper than just these two, okay? We could step up to the same speakers but with the Emotiva A100 instead for $458. That sounds even better than these speakers and is a step up from the Lipai. That's what I would recommend if you're really on a budget. Or we can step back down a little bit. You know, if this is too much Emotiva, we could still keep the same speakers because these are really killer at the price. They're only $229. You can pair these with the Yamaha RS202, which one of my best friends owns down the street. I listen to it all the time. It's a great amp, and that combination would come out to $379, which is just $1 more than what these cost, and that's a superior option. Or the best cheap option, in my opinion, would be pairing the Emotiva Airmotive B1s to an Emotiva TA100 integrated amplifier, because that gives you a sub out. You can add a cheap sub and still be under budget what these would cost with a sub. There's a ton of alternatives. I listed the cheap ones that I have the most experience with. I know ELAC makes some really good cheap speakers based on some reviews I've seen. And a lot of people love some cheaper Klipsch speakers, and you know, some of their more expensive ones also, whatever. There are other cheap options, okay? So if you're buying these to be cheap, forget it. You're just way better off buying a cheap bookshelf like this, pairing it with any number of the decent amps I mentioned, whether it be the Lipai, the Yamaha, or the Emotiva, and you will have just superior sound at all volumes, okay? If you want something for, you want these for like what they're intended for, which is like more normal use, like light volume, 70 decibels and down, go for it, you know? I'm not keeping these because my buddy's opening a restaurant, and I think I'm just gonna gift these to him actually. I think he wanted, Sonos speakers for the, just play some light background music or whatever. And I see them in restaurants sometimes, and they do sound good when I see them there. I don't think I've left anything out, and I've jabbered on way more than I thought I would on Sonos products. So I'm gonna wrap it up pretty soon here. Ask any questions you have in the comments. I'm not gonna compare these to any speakers specifically, like audiophile speakers, because you just can't. All speakers audiophiles like are better with accompanying amplifiers. That's just how it is. But these are really good for their size, their price, how good they look. For what they are, they're different. They're not an audiophile speaker. They're a good speaker though. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, take care.